welcome to today's Gale Force Twins episode. It's about time we give you a how to dock episode on our beautiful 33-foot Invincible. Today we're going to be teaching you how to dock in a slip. Specifically, we're pulling into a slip. We have content on how to back into a slip, but generally speaking, slip docking we're going to teach you and apply to other forms of slip docking as well as just regular docking. We're going to be going over things like which lines to grab first. What else, Amanda? We're going to be going over things like wind, tide, current, which lines to grab first, where to tie your lines off, how to tie your lines off, and specifically we're going to be teaching you how we slip dock in this slip today, which is actually a very unique slip, so the information you get from this episode can apply to multiple docking scenarios. My name's Amanda. My name is Emily, and welcome to our channel, Gale Force Twins. First and foremost, we want to look at the conditions around us before docking the boat. That's wind, tide, and current. If you can, when you're a safe distance from the dock, I actually recommend putting it in neutral and seeing what your boat does. Does it drift stronger from the wind? Is the current the stronger pull? When you dock, are you going to be getting pushed off the dock or towards the dock? So that way you know what you're getting yourself into. For example, we're sitting in the dock right now, and if I look around, I know that we have an east wind pushing us from the pilings towards the dock. So that gives me information that when I get into the slip, I need to grab those lines on the pilings first and then let myself drift into the dock. This slip is unique in that it's very, very wide, where if I pull into the center of this slip, I cannot physically reach the dock lines or the lines on the piling. So we have to, in order to dock at this specific slip, we have to grab lines either from the dock first, drift over to the pilings, grab piling lines, or vice versa, depending on the conditions. Okay. Now that we are in the intercoastal, I can see the dock. I do have time to put the boat in neutral. So that is what I recommend you do if you have time. That way you can see what the boat does. Is it drifting to the east, to the west? So will that put you into the dock, off the dock? And that'll give you information on how you should approach the dock. If you're in a situation where it's crowded, or maybe you don't have time or a chance to put the boat in neutral and see what it does, maybe it's a tight canal and you really don't have that luxury, because we've been there, we've docked this boat and other boats in very tight canals. Look at the other boats that are docked. What lines are tight? Is it their bow line tight, meaning that they're getting pushed down the canal? Is there a spring line tight, pushing them off the dock? Look at the other lines on the other boats. Look at flags. I don't even have a flag up. Is there a flag flying? Which way is the wind blowing? Which direction is your boat going to move when you are not actively on the throttles? Today for us, based on the wind and current, I'm going to be pushed into the dock. In most situations, that's awesome. You're like, yeah, I'm pushed into the dock. This is going to be easy. However, this slip is extremely wide. So if I get pushed into the dock, I am completely incapable of getting the lines on the pilings because it's so wide. So what I actually have to do is I have to think ahead and think I cannot get pushed into this dock because I will not be able to tie my boat up. So what I need to do is I need to pull up to the pilings, grab the lines on the pilings, start tying off, and then let myself drift towards the dock where I can get the dock lines. And vice versa, if the wind was blowing me off the dock, I'd have to pull up to the dock, grab the dock lines, and then drift into the pilings where I can get the piling lines. Now, a rule of thumb for docking, you only want to go as fast as you want to hit the dock. So how hard of a crash do you want? A little bump, no damage. A little rougher, you might hit some gel coat off there. So be mindful of that, in and out of gear. If you have twin engines, two engines, one engine at a time. There's no reason to do both engines. Now I will say, with everything I tell you, there's always going to be a caveat. There could be strong conditions, strong current, where you do need to kind of give it a little bit of juice. Thankfully today it's not too bad, but there have been times where we've had to dock the boat as if we were backing down on a marlin. I'm not gonna lie, we've had some sketchy situations. All right, we're approaching the dock, and what I'm gonna do is pull up to the left side, so my port forward piling. And it's very important that you always tie off your bow lines first, because your control is coming from the stern or the transom. You don't have engines on the bow. So if you get a stern line tied and then your bow starts flaring out, there's not much you can do for yourself. You get the bow line tied, but you don't control your transom, you're in good hands. And just so you guys know, I'm currently in neutral, just drifting. I'm still turning the wheel. All right, there we go. Bumped one engine in gear, out of gear. In gear, out of gear. One motor at a time. I'm gonna get Amanda nice and close to this forward piling, port forward piling. She's gonna grab those lines, reverse myself from hitting the piling, but that's what they're there for. She's got the lines. I'm gonna start backing up to this port transom piling on my transom. As she's tying off as quickly as she can. And I'm gonna start backing up so she can get the stern lines. You good, Amanda?
We're good.
It's always important to stay calm. There's no reason to yell. Amanda, that spring line is gonna be too tight.
Oh, any marks on it?
It's okay, we're good. All right, Amanda made that spring line too tight. She loosened it. I'm gonna back up to this piling. She's going to grab those lines. There we go. And start tying us off. It's also important that when you're docking with a team with multiple people, the captain, the one at the helm, the person at the helm, that's the person in charge. The person in charge needs to take that leadership, tell the other people what to do, what not to do. There's no reason in someone that's not behind the helm to start trying to controlling the person behind the helm. Trust me, it just makes it worse and more difficult. As you can see, Amanda tied us off and we started drifting into the dock. So now Amanda's gonna go ahead and grab those dock lines. Now I'm still gonna help her out a little bit, get her as close to that bow line. Like I said, bow lines first. So we did bow, the entire port side, and then for the starboard side, do the same thing, bow, and then down the starboard side. Now in some situations, I would say both bow lines first, and then both transom lines. But because the wind's pushing me into the dock, I knew I'd be okay to do this. All right, to help Amanda get the transom line, turn your engines towards the dock and put your outside engine in reverse. It'll actually suck the boat into the dock. We're perfectly tied up in the slip between the pilings and the dock. Now, something I do want to add that I see a lot of new boaters do is when they get close to the dock, or they get one line on or a couple lines on, or instantly get all the lines on, they turn the engines off. Why? I do not know. I see a lot of boaters do that. It's almost out of relief. Oh my gosh, we're at the dock, and turn them off. Phew, we're fine. No, do not do that. Keep those engines running. They're running right now. We're sitting here. You don't know what might happen. Maybe a wake will come and wake you and you thought you were about to grab that line and you no longer can. So please keep the engines running. There's no reason to rush to turn them off. Turn them off when you're all tied up and you're relaxed and calm. All right, we're good. We're gonna turn these engines off. Lastly, one more tip from me, and then we're gonna watch this whole thing from Amanda's perspective. She's gonna give you her tips and tricks. But for me is if you are running the boat and you are the captain, do not leave the helm. Even if you think you need to help someone, you can help them more by staying behind the wheel and controlling the boat with the engines. If you walk away and go to help someone, that's like a big no-no. Stay at the helm, you will help them more from the wheel. Time for advice from my perspective, the first mate today. The first thing I like to do is lift all the cleats ahead of time, especially because the cleats on this boat are really stiff. Some cleats are really easy and it's not a problem, but these are stiff, so I just like to lift them. That one's already up and ready because I'm gonna be taking all my lines on the port side first. I'm gonna grab a gaff because of how wide this slip is. It's gonna help me, it's gonna help Emily, it's gonna make life so much easier. Okay, you can see we are approaching the slip and Emily's staying towards the left side of the slip closer to the piling because those are the pilings I'm grabbing first because the wind is going to push us this way towards the dock. We are gonna skip the transom lines all together and I'm only focused on the bow lines and the forward spring line. Let Emily get me as close as she can, but I am gonna help and reach with this gaff. All right, got it. We're gonna just probably bump off. That's perfectly fine. And I'm going to put my gaff out of the way of the lines. We are gonna start with tying off on the port bow line. I have a marker on it. I'm gonna do an entire circle around and then my half hitches like so. Come back, do the forward spring line. These are pretty long. There it is. Entire circle around, half hitches, and I left my gaff on the bow, but that's okay. We got a boat waking us, but we're all good. Emily's taking control. Good job, Emily. All right, I'm ready when you are. That's why we always tie our bow lines first, just
because this is where the control is. The control is back here. That bow line held us off of the dock, and this is now bringing me up to the stern lines. That's another note. We are actually docking in a, basically a go as fast as you want zone. Get those out of the water quickly. All right. Then we do the transom spring. Again, I have it marked, full circle around. I will come back to this and make sure everything's tight after we're tied off. And the transom line. We're gonna go full circle around and tie our half hitches. Like so. Pull that tight. All right, now we have an east wind. It's gonna push us. Grabbing my gaff again, and we're gonna start with the starboard bow line. I can reach this with my gaff, and Emily can help me with the engines as well. And for the first tie up, I'm just gonna lay this on top and come back and fix it. All right, looks like we kicked out a little bit. I can't reach that. So Emily's gonna use her engines to get me closer until I can. Got my forward spring line. Then we're gonna get our transom spring line. Missed it, that's okay. There we go. Once again, just going right on top. I'll come back and fix that. And the last one, you see her engines are in reverse, pulling us into the dock. Makes my life way easier. I can grab this, put this out of the way, and tie off here. We've made it, we're clear in the slip. So now I'm gonna come through and take my time and kind of just thread this under here. Or I could also untie this and loop it on and then redo it. So get that threaded under. I'm gonna come back and do the same thing over here. We're gonna thread it under, tie it on. Now that we're safe at the dock, I'm gonna slow down and show you how to tie to your cleat. So we have tape markers on our lines to make sure we get it right every time. But I'm gonna come up and make an entire circle around the cleat. Now we're good. I can hold this, the boat can pull, weight can come, and I'm not gonna be holding with all my might because the cleat's doing all the work. Then we're gonna come across the cleat and go under it and do the same thing up here, across and under. So we're basically making figure eights. And then we wanna lock it in. So to lock it in, we're gonna basically, I'm taking my hand and I'm twisting the line and pulling tight. And you can see this end and this end are lined up. So we are good to go. Locked in is what we're gonna do with all the cleats, full circle, figure eights, and go ahead and lock it in.
Now that we're all tied up at the dock, let's talk about the purpose of each line and what each line is doing for us. We'll start with the bow lines. Now, if you look, we have a bow line from the cleat to the dock, and that line is going to stop us from going too far off the dock and into the intercoastal. We also have a bow line from the cleat to the piling. Now, that piling line is going to stop us from going too far off the piling and banging into the dock. So it's keeping us nicely centered between the dock and the pilings. Next, we have our spring lines. We have a forward spring line and a stern spring line. Now, you may not need forward and stern spring lines. It's actually very rare that we have used both. We often find ourselves using one or the other. In this situation, we're using both, and like I said earlier, you can't necessarily have too many lines keeping you centered and off a dock. So what that forward spring line is gonna do, going from the piling to the cleat, it's gonna stop us from going too far backwards back out of the slip. The stern spring line from the cleat to the piling is going to stop us from moving too far forwards out of the slip. Now in this situation, if we're a little too far forwards or too far backwards, it's not necessarily a bad thing for this boat because of the setup. However, we have been in slips where there's concrete walls. Maybe there's a concrete wall at your transom or at your stern, and those spring lines are going to become of utmost importance. Thankfully in this situation, our bigger issue is going too far from towards the dock or towards the pilings because we don't want to bang into either of those. But those spring lines are really going to help you if there's any concrete walls at your stern or at your bow. Lastly, we have our transom lines, and you can see we have it going from the cleat to the piling, and of course we have the same thing on both sides. And just like the bow line, that line is going to stop us from going too close into the dock, so it's keeping us on the piling and off the dock. And same thing on the starboard side, we have a line stopping us from going off the dock and into the piling. Lastly, we're going to go over some tips and tricks for getting off the dock, specifically from Amanda's perspective, but realistically both our perspectives. Go ahead, Amanda.
The first thing we're gonna do, because we have an east wind pushing us into the dock, is I'm actually just gonna totally remove all lines on the starboard side of the boat. So only removing the starboard side lines and just giving them a toss onto the dock, making sure I can reach them when we come back. Throw that. And then same thing up here. So we're just basically doing the exact opposite of what we did to get on the dock. Take that one off, but I'm gonna tie this back on. Give that a toss. There we go. Come back around. Okay. Now that we have our starboard sides off, we are going to do our stern lines. So start with my transom line back here and my transom spring line. And I am just going to Emily's using the engines right here to suck me in, but I'm also gonna help pull her. Although technically I don't have to help her and she doesn't have to help me. This could be a one-person job. But if the wind's strong, she's 100% gonna have to help me. So, coming in, once we get close enough, I'm gonna gently place this on top. All right, now it's time for the forward spring and the bow line. And I'm just gonna do the same thing. This time Emily is actually driving me up to the bow piling. And I'm gonna wrap this up, just kind of take it like so. If I need to pull it in, I can, but actually not much, just enough. I can place it on top, and then we can rub it if we need to, but I can also help make sure we don't crash into it too hard. As you can see, another big wake is coming through. Now Emily is just calmly working her way out. Emily, why don't you tell them what you're doing? That whole time that Amanda was getting all the lines off, when she had to go to that transom line, I bumped the boat in reverse, got her close to the piling. When she had to get rid of her forward lines, the bow line, I bumped going forward, got her up to that piling. And once again, just like docking, in and out of gear, one motor at a time. If you have one motor, it's your only motor. If you have two, you don't necessarily need to use both. I never used both until I was ready to fully leave the slip. So do you want me to put the camera on you now, or do you want to just talk like this?
Well, I kind of wanted to get the whole like wind and current thing like out there floating. I think it'd be more like authentic and natural.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Is that good or too much?
No, I think it was good. I think we should do that whole thing in, but smoother.
I agree.
And then also when you said, talk about the lines, but like which lines to grab first. That's a good thing you could have said too. Talk about which lines to grab first. Okay. You're good. Okay. In neutral, when you're a safe distance away from the dock, not the boat. First and foremost, what was I saying? First and foremost, we need to figure out what the strong forwards out of the clip. Out of the slip.
Do it one more time.